I'm a mum of 3 in my late 40s. I feel like my metabolism has slowed down since I turned 40. I haven't really changed how I eat or train. I do classes 2 to 3 times per week, but my weight is slowly creeping up. Please help. So that's the first question that we're going to tackle today. Before we do, though, Coach, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good is my dad hat that I'm wearing right now?
Definitely a 20 out of 10, Dave.
Have you ever seen a more of a dad hat than this dad hat that I'm wearing right now?
No, I'll just say
No.
no. Yeah, that's
No.
mega dad hat. Yeah, I'm
Yep.
assuming that you also have on slides with socks at the moment.
I don't right now, but my Crocs are in the other room. I can go get them one if you want.
Do you keep them on sport mode or do you just go regular mode so this way you blend in with everyone else?
It depends what I'm doing. If I'm in the backyard doing some work, I'm going full sport mode.
Okay, let's go. Hit the turbo.
Yeah, anyway, let's get rid of this fucking hat because that's just terrible. Anyway, let's dig into the question. Let me
Cool.
just kind of briefly outline it one more time. So we've got a mum of 3 in her late 40s. She feels her metabolism slowed down around when the time she turned 40. She hadn't really changed and hasn't really changed how she eats, how she trains. She's doing classes a couple of times per week, 2 or 3 times per week, she says, but her weight is still slowly creeping up. So there are lots of things that we can dig into here. And we're going to have to make some assumptions because the information that we read out is literally all the information that we have about this person. But Coach, what's the first thing that stands out to you that could be going on here?
I think more from a higher level overview of this question.
Yeah.
I think most moms lean into exactly what's mentioned in this question here. I haven't really changed how I eat or train. And then the next
Yeah.
thing that this person had mentioned was I do 2 to 3 classes per week, but my weight is slowly creeping up. So it's often this idea or notion that it's all based on calories out when it comes to I need to exercise. I need to exercise more. I have to do more things. And yeah, like, your weight will creep up if you do more activity because your body is looking for additional fuel to get that activity to happen, right? So it makes sense that if you're not tracking nutrition and you've been eating somewhat the same, you could have the same meals and the same nutrition as usual, and maybe those portion sizes are starting to creep up to accommodate for the extra activity, right? So there's that we could maybe assume or consider. But what were your
Yeah.
thoughts when you first read this, though?
You know what? I like what you just said. My mind is kind
Yeah,
of stuck on that, what you said right now about portion sizes slowly creeping up. And you're
yeah,
right in that unless you are measuring, right? So, for example, if I'm serving myself cooked rice, for example, whether I'm in a fat loss phase or not, I'm going to grab one of the measuring cups and I'm going to use that to serve myself the rice. So at
mm,
least I've got some degree of consistency. Now, whether it's a half cup or a full cup, it doesn't really matter. But either way, I'm not just randomly putting a bunch of rice on my plate. There is some
right.
degree of intention around it. So that could be one thing that this person needs to think about. Are you actually using the same portion sizes, or are you more eating the same foods and the same portion sizes have been slowly ramping up? That's one thing. I would also think that this person is not tracking the calorie intake. Right, as you also said, Coach, it sounds to me as if maybe the quality of is there. Maybe they're at this 80-20 balance that we like to talk about and recommend. At least 80% of what they're eating is from minimally processed nutritious foods, but they just don't know how many calories worth of those foods they are consuming. And
Mm,
by definition, if there is weight creep, energy in is greater than energy out. And at the same time, maybe it isn't just the food, right? So
mm,
maybe other things have happened that could be impacting that energy out part of the equation. And
right.
I also think it's worth mentioning at this point, we are not saying that weight loss is only about calories in, calories out. It is a lot more nuanced than that in terms of both consistency and actually getting results. Ultimately, though, if calories in exceed calories out, there is going to be weight gain. That's what it ultimately comes down to. But how we balance that out is very nuanced. Right, Coach?
Yeah, the things that are going to affect calories in versus calories out are going to be predicated on the environment in which are going to be predicated on the things that influence calories in versus calories out. So this means your sleep, how much water you're having, your stress management, the number of events that you're going to each week, and you're going into them
Yes.
without a plan. Whether or not you're tracking your steps and they're staying the same or they're less. What all those things look like. It's multifactorial. It's not just
Yeah.
one thing ever. It's never binary.
Let's dive into them one by one. I think that's going to be really helpful.
Yeah.
So, this person is a mother of three, late 40s. What often happens around the time that somebody has their first kid? Happened to me, right? You leave downtown and you move to the suburbs so you have more space
Mm.
for your kids. And something that I like to do where we live is we like to go on a family walk after dinner. Right, it's finally spring. Finally, it's warm enough. So recently, we've been going out for a walk after dinner. Now, we moved house to where we are now about 3 and a bit years ago. I think it was about 3 years ago. When we were looking for houses, we went to this particular area outside of where we were, like, I want to say a 20, 30-minute drive away from where we are now. And just driving around, checking out the neighborhoods. And as we were driving around, I said to my wife, "Where are the sidewalks? I don't see any sidewalks. I just see the road and then I see a driveway up to a house. Where do people walk around here?" And she said, "Well, they don't." And so I said, "Okay, there's no way we're moving here. No
Mm.
way." So where we live in the part of Halifax where we live, fortunately, there's lots of sidewalks. It's just like a regular kind of situation there. But if this person has moved to an area like that one, where there's no sidewalks, everything has to be car based, I bet this person's step count has dropped, like way dropped, especially if they also work from home and they have no commute anymore. I
Mm.
wouldn't be surprised if they were getting 2 to 4,000 steps per day. And we know that a huge part of the calories that you burn each day is from getting those steps, that NEAT, that non exercise activity. In fact, if you
Mhm.
look at what burns calories day to day, 70%, 70, of the calories that you burn each day are BMR, like just basically like keeping you alive, your blood pumping, right? You breathing, BMR. 10% is then the thermic effect of food. So it takes calories to break down food and release those calories. So now we're at 80%. 15% is NEAT, walking, right? The non-exercise stuff. And only 5% is from a workout. So this person may have over the years lost that 15%. So they're burning way fewer calories each day from not walking. And so the obvious solution there is to intentionally walk more. So yeah, so if you're living in the suburbs and your steps have dropped, there are going to be fewer calories burned per day. And therefore the amount of food that you used to eat may have been maintaining your weight, but now you're in like a small surplus. And that's why the weight could be increasing, because the calories burned part of the equation is just lower. How often do you see that, coach, with people that you've worked with? Maybe they work with you in person for a while, then you maybe switch to working with them online as they moved away from the city into the suburbs. Have you seen this kind of pattern before?
Yeah, absolutely. I think generally you're changing your environment. All these things are going
Mm,
to be predicated on your environment, right? So
yeah.
we talk about how your environment's going to influence all your decisions and your life in general, right? Everybody's had a job where, maybe your coworkers weren't the greatest and that affects your internal environment in terms of like your mental health at times. Or if you're at a party and you stand near the table where the food is, you're going to inherently eat more because it's like very accessible. So your environment is going to influence all these things as well. We've also, mentioned before on the podcast, if you don't have the willpower for a particular food where you can't portion it properly, then make the decision once at the grocery store to not get it versus bringing it home, or make it very
Yeah.
inconvenient to get that thing. So yeah, definitely your environment's going to be a huge influence on this. And I feel as if most people look at their fat loss journey as this very static thing where, you know, this is my goal, so I'm going to keep doing what's worked in the past. Meanwhile, the environment that you're in has now changed. Therefore, the approach also has to change. It doesn't mean you have to work harder or do more. It means you more so need to address the variables that have changed and find ways to uh, influence them in a positive way that's going to be in line with what your goals are.
Totally. And let's also expand on like, food and environment. Like if you've got 3 kids and you're in your late 40s, I'm guessing at least one of them may be still at the point where there are like frequent birthday parties that you're taking
Mm,
them to. So a couple of times a month, you're in a situation where there's birthday cake and there's pizza and there's, soft drinks, that kind of stuff. So you're in a situation several times a month, most likely, where there's all of this stuff just right there. And it's hard to not have, you know, and it's hard to not have too much in those situations. It's
mm.
hard to be mindful in those situations, especially if you've had to take these 2 kids to this spot and then take this kid to this party and you didn't have time to make a high protein breakfast. So you get to this party hungry and then you're overindulging at that point. How about the workouts, coach? Do you think the workouts could be an issue here?
To be in line with the things that I mentioned earlier about environment, yes.
Mm. Yeah.
And, I wouldn't necessarily frame it as a way of it being an issue so much
Mm.
as, again, do the type of workouts that you're doing, are the type of workouts that you're doing aligned with what it is your goals are? So if your goals are to sweat, then they may look like high intensity interval training.
Most
If your goals
classes
are
are
to
basically, right? Yeah. I think it's a
yeah,
fair assumption to make. Yeah.
yeah. If your goal is to build muscle, well, are you strength training? Because that's what's going to build muscle. Is your goal to do a 5K, 10K, then okay, then your workouts are going to look like running. So do your goals and your workouts have a degree of congruency to them for you to be able to facilitate the type of stimulus or result that you're looking to achieve? Because if not, then yeah, you're trying to hammer in a screw and it's easier to use a screwdriver to get the job
Mm.
done. It can still happen, definitely.
Yeah.
But there are easier ways to approach it to get the result you're looking for.
Totally. And let's expand on that even more.
Mm,
So this person is gaining body fat. The weight's increasing on the scale. In her late 40s. She didn't say that she's strength training. She said that
mm,
she's doing classes, which is not strength training. For the very simple reason that there's no progressive overload in a class. You're not tracking your reps. You're not tracking how much weight you're using. You're not doing an extra rep or using a slightly heavier weight each week. It's just not happening. If you go to a class and oh, I always use the 15s for this exercise, or I always use the 20s for that exercise, by definition, you are not applying progressive overload. Now, if you're saying, oh, I currently use the 15s, I started off using the 10s, and I'm close to being able to use the 20s, okay, cool, that's a slightly different story. Because you are getting stronger, there is a certain degree of progressive overload there. But I don't think this person is doing that. Well, maybe they're not doing that. I don't know for sure, of course. So I would add in, not necessarily replace, but I would add in maybe 2 days a week following an actual strength program.
mm,
30 minutes, 45 minutes, that's plenty. Compound movements, hit your full body twice over the course of a week. You need basically one squat or lunge pattern in each workout. You need one hip hinge, which basically means a deadlift or a hip thrust or a glute bridge. You need one upper body pushing exercise, like a chest press or an overhead press. You need one upper body pull, like a lat pull down or a dumbbell row. And you need one core exercise, planks,
mm,
dead bugs, side planks, etc. And you do the same 2 workouts for 4 to 6 to 8 weeks at a time, and you track how many reps you do, how much weight you use. And each week you either use a slightly heavier weight, or most likely it'll be that you do an extra rep each week and you add that in. Because what I think has potentially happened with this person is that they have lost muscle, because we all lose muscle from age 30 if we are not strength training. So I think that there has potentially been some muscle loss over the years, over almost 2 decades of not strength training potentially. And if we lose muscle, our metabolism gets a little bit slower. We burn fewer calories at rest. And even if let's say her step count is actually at a good range, in a 7 to 10,000 steps range, and let's say her food intake hasn't changed, but she's lost, I think it's 3 to 8% of your muscle mass per decade that you lose if you are not strength training. She may have lost, 5, 10 pounds of muscle over the last 2 decades, potentially. And that's more active tissue than fat tissue.
Mm.
So if your so your calorie burn your daily energy burn, the amount of calories that your body is burning per day may have dropped from not having muscle, from having lost muscle. And that's now made the entire process shift more into a calorie surplus and maintenance. What would you add there, coach, to the exercise part of things?
What I'm You had mentioned about, choosing your weight and increasing the weight progressive
Mm,
overload. That comes
mm.
down to tracking, right? Okay, so
Yes.
are you tracking your exercises? Are you tracking the lifts? Are you tracking the movements? I think a lot of what I'm reading through this question is I'm a mom of three in my late 40s. I feel like my metabolism has slowed since turning 40. Okay, well, and this is not to dismiss the question, but what are we using to track whether or not your metabolism has increased or decreased? There's ways you can do that, right? Yeah. Have I really changed? I haven't really changed how I eat or train. Okay. Well, how were you eating and how were
Mm.
you training? I know it says 2 to 3 classes per week currently, but what was it prior? And is it still the same? Like factually, right? My weight is slowly creeping up. And this is what prompted this thought for me is okay, what are your metrics? Is it only the scale? Is it only measurements? Is it how your clothes are fitting? What are your metrics to say, hey, yeah, actually, I can prove that this has been trending in the direction I don't want it to be? And I think a lot of the challenges we can have with this feeling of, things are getting more challenging or that they're not going in the right direction. Like, I'm not doubting that this person's weight is slowly creeping up. Okay, sure. But what is the composition of that? Right. So is it fat mass? Okay. If it's fat mass, then how do we work on changing the things that we're tracking to be able to have your results trend in the direction you want it to trend into? Right. So a lot of the things that a lot of what I'm reading through this question, especially with the last two words with please help with an exclamation mark, is that feeling of like angst or, any sort of like stress around this. Right. So I think a lot of that has to do with that. If we can't change what we aren't tracking, if we can measure it, we can manage it, whatever, phrase or cliche you want to use, the more you see what the data says, the easier it is for you to adjust and make conclusions from the data as to what direction to move into to get you to where you want to go.
Absolutely. Yeah, well said, coach. Yeah. Yeah, it seems that there's no tracking right now,
Mm-hmm.
potentially. So I think step one is to maybe just start to track what you're doing. Start to track and don't go overboard with this, right? We don't want to go too intense. Just maybe you start to track, okay, how many calories am I actually eating? Like forgetting about the macros, like how much protein, fat, and carbs. That could be a thing that you have a look at in a couple of weeks' time. But just track how many calories you're eating right now. Track your steps, right? Make sure you're wearing your Fitbit or your Apple Watch or you have your phone in a pocket or something and just track how many steps you actually get per day. And I think those two metrics are going to give you a pretty big insight into what specifically is happening. And honestly, just adjusting one of those two things once you have some data could be a really good step too. You go, okay, my
Mm-hmm.
steps are actually only at 4,000. That is not good for long term health, let alone like fat loss or weight maintenance. Let me figure out how to shift that over the next couple of weeks or 3 or 4 weeks, however long you want to take, up to like 7 or 8,000 steps per day. Let me just figure that out first. And then once you figure that out, if things start to shift in the right direction, great. Maybe that's all you change. But
Yep.
I think just tracking those two metrics may be in terms of the return that you may get on the amount of time and effort invested, those are, I would say, like the low hanging fruits right there. What do you think,
Yeah,
coach?
I would agree. Like, if you to get to a particular destination, you're first got to start to get the plan as to what will get you to where you want to be. You first need to figure out where you are. So
Mm.
if we were to say, hey, yeah, get 7 to 10,000 steps, and you're currently getting 2,000 steps, that's way more than what you're currently doing. And that
Yeah.
in itself is going to be such a high stimulus that maybe your legs are going to start hurting, which would end up translating to you not wanting to do your classes. And there's this like, domino effect that happens too. So I think
Yeah.
figuring out where you currently are to help you outline where you're looking to go is going to be the best approach here. So starting with, like you just mentioned, tracking your steps. What am I currently getting? And then from there, well, how much water am I drinking in a day? Cool.
Mm.
Well, how many workouts am I doing that are strength based? How many classes am I really doing? all of these things. And from there, tracking that over a 7 to 10, maybe even 2 week period.
Mm,
And from there, bumping things up one facet at a time. Okay,
yeah.
from here, I'm going to try to increase my steps by 500 for the following week. Or I'm going to do, like you had said about progressive overload, 1 or 2 extra
Mm,
reps at the same weight, or 5 to 10 pounds
yeah.
more on a particular exercise. So slowly increasing what it is that you're doing over a period of time that's going to allow it to be sustainable and not feel overwhelming as well.
Well said, coach. Yeah. And then I think something else worth looking at, especially for a busy mum of three in her late 40s, look at stress and look at sleep, because I think getting those under control is most likely as important as the fitness and nutrition approach that you take.
Mm.
Not because feeling stress and sleeping poorly is going to directly cause weight gain. It doesn't. It's not like you get a poor night of sleep and now there's some body fat around your middle. That's not how that works. It's more about the second and third order impact on your behavior.
Mm.
So if you are sleeping poorly, you're going to feel hungrier the next day. It just messes around with the hunger hormones. So you are more likely going to quickly grab a snack that you literally will forget about tracking later on. So there's like a couple hundred calories right there that you may not even be taking into account. Stress. I mean, like, who hasn't stress eaten? I mean, I know that I have before. I'm sure you have, coach. I'm sure people listening
Of
have
course.
stress eaten before. And again, it could be a quick thing that you grab either at the office or as you're passing by the pantry. You just grab something quickly and you throw it into your mouth. And then because you're so busy, you literally forget about it later on. So
Yes.
thinking about what's going on in terms of stress and in terms of sleep, that's also, I think, going to be really important to understand. And again, late 40s, this is where the symptoms of perimenopause can start to appear. So maybe sleep is bad right now, or maybe it's sometimes bad. Maybe one of your kids isn't sleeping well, and therefore you're not sleeping well as well. So sleep, I think, is something to look at, and it may well just be a thing that you have to accept is going to be bad for a little bit, especially if it's something that's out of your control, like kids. Go ahead, coach.
Yeah.
You were going to say something.
I was going to say, with the lack of sleep, that's going
Yeah.
to have a huge effect on, yeah, like the choices you're going to make the next day. So I think this is all the
Mm,
more reason to try and implement something like a plan or a strategy, but also, with that plan or strategy, leaving margin on either side of that. Like, okay, maybe one night sleep is really good. Okay, that's a day that then you can push a bit harder in your workout because you have more recovery in your gas tank, for example.
yeah.
And if you know that, okay, sleep was bad last night, so you're going to be more susceptible to wanting to reach for things that maybe aren't necessarily, again, in line with your goals nutritionally, but giving yourself some space and compassion for that too. Like, okay, yeah, sure, I'm feeling kind of stressed out. I want to have the chocolate, and then you end up, having all the other things that aren't the chocolate, and then have the chocolate on top of all the other things that you thought you ought to be having. So again, like we mentioned earlier, like portioning out those things that are going to be helpful in terms of, yeah, I'm not saying to, cope with food and, you know, have chocolate, that kind of stuff to like manage your stress. At the same time, like have the thing that you want, but be intentional about it. I'm going to have a square of chocolate to help curb this craving. Cool. Not, I'm
Mm,
going to have, have it to my heart's content and not track it or put it in a place, or then even just feeling bad about it as well.
mm,
How do
mm.
you integrate these things? So this way, okay, in the event of, I know if I'm tracking my calories, if I had a bad day of sleep, I can go up to maintenance calories and know that at the very least I'm going to maintain where I'm at versus just, you know, having whatever I want and then, feeling not the greatest about it, which would end up leading again to like poor night of sleep, end up in this cycle where you feel like, hey, someone please help.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sleep and stress will impact your choices
Mm,
if you are not being intentional about how you're approaching this. If you go by how you feel on those days, if you go by your hunger and how you feel on those days, you're going to overeat, almost
mm.
certainly.
Yeah, of
And the
course.
other things happen, like, you're more tempted to finish your kid's plate. See that all the time with the mums that we work with, right? Not that they do it, but it was a thing that they realized that they were doing. And we therefore help them to stop doing it. And getting out of the mindset of not wasting food. Oh, my kid didn't finish it. I don't want to throw it out. It's wasteful. Okay. So instead of throwing it in the trash can, you're throwing it down your mouth. You're treating yourself as a trash can. So there are lots of things that could potentially be happening here. In summary, let's just go through them quickly, like one by one. So first of all, are your steps in that 7 to 10,000 steps range, or have they dropped because of your environment where you live in the suburbs? Are you doing any form of strength training? If not, add that in. Think about the weekends in an additional environment where there's just going to be more high calorie food around. And if you are underslept, overstressed, it's going to be so much harder to choose not to overindulge at those events. And are you tracking anything right now? Are you tracking how many steps you're getting? Are you tracking your food intake? Just start to track those things. It's going to give you a much better idea of what exactly is going on. And the funny thing about starting to track and to pay more attention to these things is that it almost always helps you make more positive choices in the moment because you're being more intentional and more aware of things. In fact,
Mm.
I think that is one of the reasons why, generally speaking, vegetarians tend to have slightly better long-term health outcomes than the meat eaters. But if you're a vegetarian or if you have any kind of dietary restriction, you by definition always have to quickly pause to make sure that what you're about to eat is in line with your dietary restrictions. And the pause and the extra level of awareness helps you make that more positive choice.
Mm. I would
Yeah.
definitely agree with that. I think the mindfulness of having like all the stuff we're mentioning here in
Mm,
terms of like nutrition, for example, like we've mentioned this before on the podcast, the, you know, keto,
mm.
carnivore, whatever, fasting, all these things, they're all going to provide a degree of like constraint.
Yeah.
And that constraint is going to lend itself to there having to be a pause or an intentionality or a mindfulness that's associated with nutritional intake.
Mm.
I'm not implying that just the pause in itself is going to, you know, facilitate fat loss or weight loss. But what I am implying is that there is a moment where you're having a more conscientious thought around your nutritional input
Yeah.
versus mindlessly having whatever your body feels like you need. So is what you're doing from a nutrition perspective, is it an actual hunger cue that you're addressing? Or is it more so a stress response that you're trying to? So is it like a proper hunger or like a hedonic hunger? Do I
Yeah.
need that crunchy chip that's salty? Okay, maybe you have, an apple instead to curb that crunch that you're looking for, right? So there's all these different types of hunger. There's all these different types of things that your body's asking for.
Mm.
And when you take that moment to pause, you get a better understanding of what your body's actually looking for
Yeah.
versus, you know, doing whatever you feel is right in the moment predicated on what your cravings are.
Totally agree there, coach. Yeah. And if you also zoom out and you look at, okay, over the course of a day, they may well be, 5 or 6 opportunities where you're having to make an intentional choice around food, breakfast, lunch, dinner, a couple of snacks. Let's call it 5 in a day.
Hmm.
So over the course of a week, that's like 35 to 40 choices that you're making. Over the course of a month, it's like 150. Over the course of 3 months, it's like almost 500. So almost 500 times or more likely over the course of 3 months, where just that quick pause before you make that decision, it's not going to help you make the better choice every single time, nor should it. But if it nudges you in the right direction, let's say 100 times out of 500, that may well be the difference between long-term weight maintenance and long-term weight gain.
Yeah. So we had spoken about this yesterday in the workshop that we did,
Mm,
right?
yeah,
About how putting your breakfast and lunch on autopilot. Like most of us eat the same
yeah,
10 meals, man.
yeah,
And like,
yeah,
I'm a huge fan of, you know, when people think of training, it's like, oh, like this program is boring or it's not exciting. Well, it's not the program that's supposed to entertain you, nor is your food, right? So the things that having structure around those things, like your nutrition and your structure, or nutrition and your workouts, is what lends itself to being able to do more exciting things. So because you
mm,
have structure on your nutrition for, you know, 80% of your intake, so say breakfast and lunch and most of your dinners, that lends itself to having more excitement with things like when you're going out to eat, because you can have a day or two where you're increasing your calories, and you can go to a restaurant and have something that maybe you don't normally do, and it becomes novel and becomes exciting because it's not something that you're always doing. The same thing
Yeah,
goes for your workouts as well. So yeah, maybe my workouts seem like they're just consistent and I'm keeping them the same for 4 to 6 weeks at a time, so I can try to increase and progress my strength metrics. Sure. And in becoming stronger, that allows you to play a pickup game of basketball, softball, or do activities with your kids that they want to do, say rock climbing, whatever it is. So it's having consistency and, doing those boring, quote unquote, things that lend itself to having more exciting, more exciting outputs longer down the line as well. So I think it's finding that the consistency in the discipline that you're executing on when it comes to your nutrition, your strength, that maybe seems monotonous or boring at times. I think looking at the inverse of what doing those things allows you to do is what ends up becoming more exciting in the long term too.
totally. Yeah. The way that I look at my workouts and how I eat, I want to say I'm basically neutral about them overall. Like, in that I'm glad that I'm making the choices I'm making, for sure. I feel like, okay, what I'm doing right now is good for short term, it's good for long term. It's going to keep me strong, keep me healthy, not going to lead to any kind of weight gain. I'm happy with this. So I am happy with it, but not in the sense of like that sense of joy. I'm
Mm.
happy in the sense of this is good. I'm going to keep doing this. Workouts are not, while I'm doing them at least, I mean, yeah, I get dopamine at the end of them and throughout them, and I feel good for having done a workout, but it's not like it's a highlight of my day, let's say. It's not a major part of my personality, right? In the way that people who do CrossFit, it seems to be a
Mm.
major part of their personality. Anybody who's on like a diet with a name, it's a part of their personality. It's just, I mean, like other stuff to be thinking about, to be quite honest.
Mm.
Right. So this becomes a habit, a part of my routine. That's where I think it's going to be good for most people. And then, as you said, coach, get your fun from the stuff that it allows you to do, like hiking, playing pickleball, whatever it is that you enjoy doing. Like for a lot of like guys nowadays, it's like jujitsu. For people over 40, let's say it tends to be pickleball. It kind of depends where you are in life. That's where you can derive the fun and the excitement from physical activity. And honestly, if you want entertainment from food, that's what restaurants are for. Or
Well,
getting takeout once a week, or like, having a family get together once a week. Not every meal needs to be like fun and exciting. It could be there's a protein, there's a plant based thing, and there's a starch. Like, okay, great. I'm going to eat it. It tastes fine. I'm going to enjoy it. And then that wasn't again like it wasn't the main thing that I was looking forward to all day. It was dinner. I have dinner every day.
so this brought up a memory I had from a recent
Mm,
experience. So
yeah,
I'd gone to this amazing Italian restaurant that's one of
yeah,
my favorite places in Toronto. And I
yeah.
go there because it tastes exactly the way my grandmother used to cook.
Nice.
And yeah, it was like fantastic. The, the best Italian food I've had in a long time. And yeah, sure, the food is great. But I also go there because the experience of the servers, the experience
Yeah,
of the decor, the way, the way the environment is in the place as well. So it's okay, it's the same food that my grandmother used to make. Like it's the same stuff, but
yeah,
it's how it's served. It's the experience. Like that's the novelty involved with
yeah,
that as well, right? And
yeah,
if you think about all the things that we're mentioning here in terms of like the sports, the restaurants, the takeout, all that stuff, this is all a breakdown of the same principle we've mentioned many times on the podcast, which is it's an 80-20 rule. 80% of your results come from 20% of the inputs, right? So that 20% of the times that you're doing the fun stuff, the restaurants allows you to do the 80% that isn't as, quite frankly, exciting at
yeah.
times. But that 80% is what gets you to where you want to be and what you're looking to do from the small bit of 20, right?
That's a great point. Yeah. So I think, again, I want to be very clear. You can and you should derive pleasure from food.
Mm.
That's completely fine. You can and you should be entertained by food. That's also completely fine. but maybe not every single meal needs to be an amazing novel experience. It doesn't need to be a super entertaining experience. I have the same breakfast and the same lunch most days. It tastes good to me. Doesn't taste bad.
Mm.
I'm like, okay, I'm hungry. I'm going to go have my breakfast now. Okay, great. I enjoy that, but now I'm going to get on with the rest of my day. And then when we make nachos on a Saturday sometimes, or when we get takeout, or when we go to a restaurant, I look forward to that because it becomes more of an activity. And I think you look forward to it because it's not every meal.
I think when I've referenced this before, one of my clients,
Yeah.
we were looking at his progress photos. I said, like, what do you think of them? He said, I didn't realize how much of a difference has happened. And it was
Mm.
only at like maybe 12 or 16 weeks at the time. Excuse me. So why do you think that is? And he said, well, if you have the Mona Lisa in your living room, it's the Mona Lisa in your living room. It doesn't matter. That's the Mona Lisa. It's like you see that thing every day. So like,
Yeah.
but when you haven't seen or done something in a long time, then when you go back and revisit it and do it, then there's again like that degree of novelty that like, oh, I haven't done
Mm.
this in so long. Like I really enjoyed it last time I did it. So it's
Mm.
the same with your nutrition as well. Like, oh, I really enjoyed that restaurant. So now you have a restaurant that you can go to when you want to either celebrate or keep it in your back pocket where it's like, okay, I know if I'm going to take a day to do a maintenance day, I want to make sure that I really enjoy that experience. So I'm going to go do that at that place.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If Gordon Ramsay were your personal chef, it'd be amazing for a few days, but then you'd very quickly get used to it. That's
I feel
just
like
the
he'd find
human
a way to keep
condition.
it
We just get
interesting.
used to everything, right? We would. We'd get used to everything.
I'm imagining Gordon Ramsay as my personal chef, and I don't know how I feel about that.
Oh, that's funny. Here's another question. How do I know when I need more discipline versus when I just need to give myself grace? Well, I know the people who need to give themselves more grace. All of the type A people who are crushing workouts week in, week out, who are very, very strict with their nutrition most of the week, and then one day happens and they negatively self talk. I think they need to give themselves more grace. They're doing pretty well. I think anybody who is trying and making the effort and actually taking action, even if they're not succeeding, they keep falling off track. I think they need to give themselves more grace. What do you think, Coach?
I'm a bit of like a maybe not so popular opinion about this. I
Go
feel
for it.
like people who feel like they need more discipline can use more grace. People who feel like they
Yep,
need more grace could probably use more discipline. It's a balance like anything
absolutely.
else, and at some point that's going to
Yeah,
shift, and then you got to be the other person. Like these things
totally.
undulate, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, although I am an advocate of most people don't need more discipline, I think most people who are trying unsuccessfully to lose weight, I think the problem is less discipline and more the plan. Like the plan doesn't fit your life,
Mm.
right? The plan wasn't built for somebody with a couple of kids who's in their 40s, not sleeping great some nights, doesn't have much free time because work is stressful. I think then, I think those people, I mean, they have discipline because of the things that I just said. Like, you cannot thrive in your career. You cannot get married and have kids and maintain a stable household. You can't do that without discipline. You just can't. You need
Mm.
a certain degree of discipline to do stuff. You can't save money if you don't have any discipline. Because if you didn't have any discipline, you wouldn't be able to save money.
What I would also look at here is
Mm,
okay. Look at the question: how do I know
yeah.
when I need more discipline versus when I just need to give myself more grace? Well, if you have to give yourself more discipline, then maybe the approach you're taking is one that is 2 or 3 steps ahead of where you're currently at.
Mm, yeah.
So you may be asking too much of yourself at the moment. Like we do this with our clients all the time. Like, okay, like
Mm,
what is the smallest amount of change you can make? Like we'll aim for something where our clients will be like, oh man, that's like, there's no way I can't not do that. It's okay, then do that.
yeah.
Like, okay, can we increase our steps by 500 steps? And even if that as the metric is too much, it's like, okay, well, can we increase it by, we know like, okay, it's about 1,000 steps every 10 minutes.
Mm,
Okay, can we increase steps by 5 minutes then? So maybe it's the unit of measure that you're looking to change that has to shift to make it more palatable or like something that's more approachable.
yeah.
So trying these different things is the approach. Like the I've always said this where coaching is a process of self-discovery more than anything. You discover what works for you in the process of trying all these different things. It's the scientific
Mm.
approach. It's a scientific method, right? I'm going to implement said intervention, measure to see what the change is, and if there's no change, then we change one thing. Cool. So, did I change that 500 step count? Did it make any change? No. Okay, maybe we have to go to 700, 750, or 1,000. Okay. If that rate of change or that amount of change that you're asking for from yourself is too much, then you're not setting yourself up for success long term, which is then going to lend itself to feeling failure, which makes you feel like, again, you need more discipline. You double down, you say,
Yeah.
fine, I'm going to go to 1,500. And then you're in this perpetual cycle for, you're living the same 6 months for the next 15 years because you're asking too much of yourself.
Yeah.
Making the change smaller is going to make it more manageable.
Yep. I think discipline is useful to get you started. Because if you're not doing anything, it's really hard to start to intentionally walk more, to start to work out, to start to eat more protein, to eat more fruits and vegetables, to start to track your food intake. It's hard to do those things if you're coming from zero. So I think that is where discipline is important and often required. It's to build the momentum. But then momentum should carry you forward. And one positive choice should make it easier to make an additional positive choice, and then an additional positive choice, and then another one. And you enter this positive feedback loop. But I think you need discipline to actually enter that positive feedback loop.
Thought came to mind just now as you were talking.
Yeah.
So, from a workout perspective, okay,
Yeah.
like from an exercise physiology lens, whenever you're doing a particular exercise, say you're doing goblet squats, you're holding a dumbbell in a goblet
Mm.
position, you're going to do 12 to 15 repetitions, say, okay? So,
Yeah.
because you're doing so many repetitions, the weight has to be lighter, the intensity is lower, okay? If you're going to be doing 4 to 6 repetitions, that means there's less time under tension. The weight can be heavier because you're not doing as many repetitions. Okay. So the same kind of thought line happens when it comes to discipline as well.
Mm.
The more discipline or the higher the intensity of the goal or the shorter the time frame, then yeah, you can put more discipline, more intensity on that. Like for example, I signed up for a 10K run and I've not been doing any running, but I have this super ambitious goal and I've had such a hard time with discipline in terms of like, oh, like, do I really want to go outside and run? Like, there's a single cloud in the sky. It might rain. Like, kind of trying to find any excuse not to. Oh, my legs are like a little
Yeah.
sore. I didn't sleep that. Like, no, I know that, okay, I can maintain this because it's only 5 weeks that I've given myself to train for this. So I can suffer or, put myself in a position where I'm not going to be necessarily enjoying the process in that time because it's only a short time frame. But if I were to try and take the same approach for 10 weeks, 15, 20, an entire year, I would not stick to it because last I checked, I don't remember anybody, myself included, who felt like shit while doing something and said, wow, like I'm going to keep doing that thing. So, how do you make the approach that you're taking to do this enjoyable where you can not even, doesn't have to be enjoyable, like, oh, I'm so excited for it. It's like, how do I make it a amount of discomfort that I'm willing to endure every day for 8, 12, 15, 20, 60, 52 weeks or whatever it is, right? That you're trying to take here. Cause
Yeah.
the easier, the approach that you take has to be one that you can sustain and see yourself actually doing for that extended
Yeah.
period of time.
Yeah. For sure. And it's the getting started of those things, of doing the thing that you know you should be doing, but you don't want to do. Like, how do you do that? I mean, the answer is you just literally decide to do it anyway. You just decide I'm going to do it. Like, I don't want to wake up at 5 o'clock to work out or to work, right? Sometimes, but sometimes I have to because I've got to be up at that time. I've got to get stuff done. I've got stuff to do. So I've got to get up. I've got to do some work on my computer. Then I've got to go and do a workout. I didn't want to wake up early to do either of those things, but there's a result that I want. And I want the result more than the negative feeling of not wanting to do it. It's like a cost benefit analysis, essentially. Okay, what are the benefits? What are the costs? What do I like more? What do I feel stronger about? Okay, I prefer the benefits, so let's get up and do it. I
Yeah.
don't want to do it, but I'm just going to make the choice. Like sometimes clients ask me, well, how do I start to work out? Or just people I speak to, whatever. Like, how do I start to work out if I don't want to? And you can talk through, and it's a useful exercise to talk about, reducing the friction. Like, make sure you've got your clean workout clothes ready for you. Make sure that your home gym is in a nice place. If your basement is like creepy and disgusting, maybe don't try to train in your basement. Maybe you make another room your workout room. And maybe you set your alarm at the other end of your bedroom so that you're forced to get out of bed early and get up and do it. And we can talk through all of those things, reducing the friction. Those are all good things. And ultimately, there is still going to have to be a certain degree of discipline to then choose to do it as well. Yeah. I think a good way of looking at this potentially is to like zoom out. Look at what you have been doing, generally speaking, in the last, call it 6 weeks, and then move forward in time. Where will the last 6 weeks worth of habits take you long term? If it's going to take you to a good spot, then I don't think you need more discipline. You can give yourself
Yeah.
grace from time to time. That's completely fine. But if in the last 6 weeks you have just been thinking about things, not taking any kind of action, and you know that if you keep doing what you have been doing in the last 6 weeks, it's not going to take you to a good spot long term, I think maybe then we got to lean towards discipline.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
It's in the way that sometimes clients say, "Oh, I had a really bad night of eating on Saturday night. I got back on track on Sunday morning, but it wasn't great on Saturday." And we dig into it. We try to explain, okay, like what happened, why did it happen, what can we try next time? And then there's also a useful exercise where we zoom out and we think, okay, well, if we look at the last 4 weeks, how many times has this actually happened? Oh, once. Okay, cool. So it's an exception rather than a pattern. Okay, cool. It happens. You made a mistake because you're human and you're learning from it. It's a blip. In the same way that weight loss is not linear, mindset progress, how you're doing towards these things is not going to be linear either. There are going to be dips and then you're going to get back to it if you have that growth mindset. The exact same thing here.
I I've navigated this mindset with people often where it's like, you know, that idea of like that waiting for the other shoe to drop. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mm.
Where it's like, oh, I knew that this was going to happen because,
Yeah.
I fell off and I know. And like, well, yeah, it's like with behavior change, like relapse is part of it. And I'm not saying like this
Yeah.
is similar to that of like alcoholism or anything like that. I'm saying
Yeah.
like you're going to have like this idea that I've fallen off the horse or like I've gone off track. No, like this is part of the track. It's just a slight detour. There was
Yeah.
a pothole in the road. You had to go around it. You still kept going forward. So it's more so recognizing that this is part of it. So the sooner you can get over that part of it, the easier it's going to be to continue forward and continue to make progress versus, beating yourself up for it, because the beating yourself up for it is what's slowing you down in the moment where you could consciously make a better decision to continue the path forward instead. You're spending time on a thing that you can no longer do anything about versus looking at,
Yep.
okay, think forward. What am I able to change then because of that?
Yeah. I think mistakes are an essential part of acquiring a new skill. And everything
Mm-hmm.
that we're talking about comes under the umbrella of skills, like
Yeah.
tracking, dealing with social events, getting enough steps each day. These are skills, habits, skills, whatever you want to use. But there are skills, and therefore you have to make mistakes so that you know what doesn't work.
Uh,
It's like a kid learning to walk, right? They've got to learn, like, what doesn't work. They've got to fall down and then they've got to pick themselves back up. Literally.
when you had said that, it reminded me of this quote I came across where flexing your skills leads to acquiring scars. And
Mm.
you're going to acquire those scars that are lessons for you, right? Proverbial, obviously,
Yeah.
or you'd like
Yeah.
to hope. And yeah, like, okay, I learned that in trying to take an approach that was a 500 calorie deficit, or sorry, rather like a 1500 calorie deficit, that now I have the scar of, oh shit, like I completely went on a bender for a week food wise. So
Yeah.
now I have the scar realizing, okay, if I messed up in trying to take that big of a deficit. So I'm going to learn the skill of having a
Yeah.
smaller deficit and maintaining that for a longer period of time.
Exactly. And why should you be good at something the first time you try it? Why should you be? Like, I mean, I'd learned to drive, like, embarrassingly late in life. I was 39 when I got my driver's license, and I'm almost 41. So I got
Yep.
it recently. And the first couple of driving lessons, I was shit. I was not good at driving because nobody is the first time you get into a car. It's a brand new experience. You've never like touched the accelerator. You never pumped the brake, or you never touched the steering wheel. You don't know what you're doing when you first start out. You don't know how to properly turn it, the hand over hand method. You learn this kind of awkward way of doing everything. So of course you're going to suck doing something new because it's new and you're a human, and humans are not good at new things the first time they try them. If you play a musical instrument, like you don't just you don't just pick up like a guitar and know how to play. You have to practice. You have to make mistakes. You got to acquire the skill. Like no one's good at anything the first time they do it. So apply that same mindset here.
Proof of this. Scroll back to episode 1. Look how like anxious and tight and like shit this podcast. Well, for myself at least, this podcast was. I was like, yeah,
oh no,
maybe I think
I still put in those filler words all the fucking time. Like, yeah, so I always put them in still. And go back to our Instagram pages too. I mean, I've been posting consistently since 2019. Go back then. It was bad content. I've left it up, but go back and look at it. It was shit. It was just terrible. But you have to suck so that you could become good at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, think about our very first clients that we ever worked with as coaches, whether in person or online. It's just terrible. I feel like giving them a refund, honestly.
I've come to the conclusion that at the end of my career, whenever I stop coaching, the last thing I will do will be to send out many emails of many apologies to everybody that I've coached, because I would hope by then, I'd figured out, hey, like there were way better ways I could have done things. I'm sorry. And some of them might be like, who are you? Other people would be like, hey, Santo, like we're on a journey together. No worry about it.
Yeah.
Other people are going to, the email will bounce back because I've been blocked. I'm sure, there's many, there's many things to consider, but at the same time, like the approach or the mindset that most people need to understand with all this stuff is, we're not finished products. And I'll reference my therapist and what he had said to me, which I hold close to myself every day. Cause like most people who are listening to this, I call myself a type B plus personality. So not quite a type A, but not quite A minus, which is, a finished product is one that's always working on itself. Staying curious is how you stay consistent, because you've tried to figure out what are the things that I'm doing that allow me to stay consistent in the things that I want to pursue. It's that pursuit that we always want to be a more present mom or dad, uncle, brother, father, whatever it is that you're doing, right? And in that curiosity is where the enjoyment is, because if we had it all figured out, then you would just say, oh, I'm going to do this now. And you wouldn't necessarily enjoy it the same way. It's that struggle or that chase that you have that makes it, something that you want to keep performing and doing.
What a great ending to the podcast. Thank you for today, Coach Santo. Yeah. Thanks everybody for listening. If you enjoyed this, we would very much appreciate a 5-star review or a like on whatever platform you're on. Hit that follow button, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening, everybody.